Choose betrayal or blood, what would you do? I buried my husband on a cold Tuesday morning, and by Saturday, my own sister stood in front of our family and announced that her baby was his son. She waved a forged will, demanding half of my $800,000 house. Everyone stared at me, waiting for me to break. But instead, I smiled. Because what she didn't know, what nobody in that yard knew, was that I had proof so explosive, it would burn her entire lie to ashes. And when the truth finally came out, my sister's life would never be the same again. My name's Bridget, I'm 34, and 3 months ago I buried the love of my life. Adam, my husband of 11 years, died out of nowhere from a brain aneurysm. No warnings, no signs, just gone in an instant. One moment he was kissing me goodbye before work, brushing off his pounding headache as a migraine. The next, the hospital was calling, telling me there was nothing they could do. He was only 36. I thought the worst day of my life had already happened. I thought nothing could break me more than losing him. But I was wrong. Because 1 week after we lowered his body into the ground, I walked into my nephew's first birthday party, my sister Cassandra's kid, and she dropped a bomb so twisted it almost made me laugh in her face. The backyard was full of balloons, cupcakes, awkward relatives pretending to have fun while sneaking pitiful glances at me, the fresh widow. I was barely holding myself together, smiling politely, trying not to break down in front of children. Then Cassandra, wearing a brand new dress and fake confidence plastered across her face, tapped her glass for attention. She cleared her throat, set her hand on little Lucas's curly head, and said words that made the entire yard freeze. Lucas isn't Tyler's son. He's Adam's. The air left my body like I'd been punched. My dead husband. My baby sister. My 1-year-old nephew. Gasps went around the crowd. My mom suddenly found her shoes very interesting. My dad stiffened, as if he was about to collapse. And Cassandra, she just kept talking, her voice steady, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this speech in the mirror 100 times. She said she and Adam had a moment of weakness 2 years ago. That they never wanted to hurt me, but things happen. And then, like the final stab, she pulled out a folded document and announced that Adam had updated his will before his death, leaving half of our $800,000 house to her son. She held it high like a trophy, the paper shaking dramatically in her hand. Adam wanted his son taken care of, she declared, eyes locked on me. Every set of eyes turned to me, pity, shock, disgust, morbid curiosity. And I stood there, my face calm, my lips twitching because I was this close to laughing. Not because it was funny. But because it was so outrageous, so absolutely impossible, that my body didn't know whether to cry, scream, or burst out laughing. May I see it? I asked her quietly. Cassandra's face flickered, just for a second, like she hadn't expected me to stay so calm. Still, she strutted forward and shoved the paper into my hands. I scanned it quickly, and my suspicions were instantly confirmed. The language was sloppy, nothing like the airtight legal documents Adam brought home when he was alive. The formatting was wrong, the dates didn't line up, and the signature? Oh God, the signature. Adam's real signature had this subtle connecting stroke between the A and the D. The one on that paper was clumsy, exaggerated, like someone had tried to copy it from memory or Google Images. I folded it neatly, handed it back, and looked her dead in the eye. Thank you for sharing this, I said calmly, with a polite little smile. I think I'll be going now. The crowd stared like I'd lost my mind. Cassandra blinked, thrown off her script. That's it? You're not going to say anything? Not right now, I told her. This is Lucas's day. We'll talk later. And then I walked out. I left the whispers, the gasps, the broken party atmosphere behind me. I got into my car, shut the door, and that's when I finally broke. I laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but the kind that rips out of your chest when the world has become so ridiculous that you can't do anything else. Tears streamed down my face as I cackled like a madwoman. Because Cassandra thought she had me. She thought she was about to steal half of my house, half of my life. But there was one little thing she didn't know. Adam and I had a secret. I guess to understand why that moment at the birthday party hit me the way it did, you need to know a little more about Adam. Because he wasn't just my husband. He was my everything. We met 12 years ago at a charity auction for kids with cancer. I wasn't even supposed to be there, I'd been asked last minute to help arrange silent auction items. I was 22, still fresh out of school, working long hours as a junior designer, just trying to prove myself. And there I was, shuffling around, placing wine baskets and spa certificates, when I noticed this painting. A watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset. God, it was beautiful. Vibrant oranges melting into deep purples, the reflection stretching across the harbor. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Apparently, Adam noticed me noticing. When the bidding started, this tall, sharp-looking guy in a navy suit outbid every single person who dared raise their hand. People groaned, laughed, gave up. He didn't even flinch. He was determined. And when he won, he didn't take the painting home. He walked right over to me, held it out with a little smile that made his blue eyes crinkle, and said, "I noticed you staring at this all night. I think it belongs with you." That was Adam in a nutshell. Thoughtful. Observant. Generous to a fault. He saw people. Really saw them. And I swear to God, in that exact moment, I fell for him.
The very next night, we went out for dinner.
By dessert, I felt like I'd known him forever. He wasn't like other guys I'd dated. Adam was a corporate attorney, brilliant but humble. He remembered waiters' names.
He asked real questions and actually listened to the answers.
He treated strangers like friends. 8 months later, he proposed on the Boston Harbor at sunset, of course, with the exact skyline behind us that matched the painting he'd given me.
I don't even remember if I said yes.
I think I just cried and nodded until he laughed and slipped the ring on my finger. We bought a creaky old Victorian in Beacon Hill shortly after, right around our first anniversary. $800,000, a huge stretch at the time, but Adam had just made partner at his firm, and my design career was finally taking off. That house was more than just walls and floors. It was our dream. High ceilings, original woodwork, and a tiny garden out back where we swore our future kids would play one day.
But those kids, they never came. Not for lack of trying. We charted, we tracked, we scheduled, we prayed. Then came the doctors. The tests.
The 4 failed rounds of IVF that drained not just our savings, but also our souls. I'll never forget the drive home after that last attempt. The car was silent. Adam reached across the console, squeezed my hand, and neither of us spoke.
We didn't have to. We knew that was the end of that road.
Later that night, sitting on our porch swing, Adam kissed my hair and whispered, "We can still have a beautiful life.
You and me, that's enough." And he meant it. So we rebuilt.
Piece by piece, dream by dream. We traveled. We threw ourselves into our careers. We renovated our house room by room until it looked like something out of a magazine.
Adam supported me when I quit my firm and launched my own interior design business.
He was my biggest fan.
Life wasn't what we planned.
But it was good. It was ours. But in the background, always lurking like a storm cloud, was my younger sister, Cassandra. She was 4 years younger, 30 now, and had always been the wild child. While I was busting my butt in school and building a business, she was bouncing from job to job, boyfriend to boyfriend, chasing some fantasy life while our parents constantly bailed her out. She was gorgeous, one of those women who could walk into a room and instantly grab all the attention without trying.
And she knew it. Used it.
But beneath that charm was a constant need to compete with me. If I bought a new car, she complained about hers until mom and dad helped her get an upgrade. When Adam and I got our house, she whined for months about her tiny apartment. When I started dating Adam, suddenly she was into law students.
It never ended.
And Adam, sweet, patient Adam, would always remind me, "She's your only sister.
Family's important.
Don't shut her out." So I kept her close, even when it hurt. 2 years before Adam died, Cassandra showed up at Thanksgiving dinner with Tyler, a tattooed bartender with a motorcycle and an attitude that made my parents pale. Their relationship was volatile from day one, dramatic fights, over-the-top makeups, the whole cliché. Then, at the same table where Adam and I had once announced our engagement, Cassandra stood up, put her hand on her stomach, and with crocodile tears streaming down her face, announced that she was pregnant. I swear my heart split in half that night. After years of infertility, after all the heartbreak, she had accidentally gotten the one thing I had begged the universe for. I smiled, I clapped, I hugged her. But inside, I was crushed. Still, I promised myself I'd be the best aunt in the world. When Lucas was born, I was at the hospital with flowers and a handmade blanket I'd knitted for months. I tried. God, I really did. But Cassandra? From the very beginning, she seemed overwhelmed, exhausted, almost detached. She called me crying constantly, begging me to watch Lucas so she could sleep.
I became his second mom without even realizing it. And Adam, well, he was kind, but distant.
I thought maybe it was because of our infertility, that being too close to a baby who wasn't ours just hurt too much.
Looking back, maybe it was something else entirely. Because when Cassandra stood up at that birthday party and announced Lucas was Adam's son? For one split second, the thought crossed my mind, what if? But then I remembered. I remembered the secret. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she was lying. The Tuesday Adam died started like any other. He woke up complaining of a headache. "Nothing major, just a dull ache behind his eyes," he said. I told him to stay home, rest, maybe let me make him some tea. But Adam had a big client meeting that morning, and he brushed it off. "It's just a migraine, Bridget. I'll be fine," he promised, kissing me goodbye like always. "I'll call you after the meeting." That call never came. Instead, my phone rang at 11:07 a.m. It was the hospital. A voice, too calm, too professional, asked if I could come immediately. By the time I arrived, Adam was already gone. A ruptured brain aneurysm. Instant. Nothing anyone could have done. I don't even remember the drive home. I don't remember the next few days. Just faces, flowers, casseroles on my counter, and the crushing silence of our house. His shoes still by the door. His toothbrush still damp. The smell of his cologne on our bed. And through all of it, Cassandra was absent. She sent a few half-hearted texts, "Sorry, Lucas is sick or can't find a sitter," but didn't show up until the funeral. Even then, she slipped in late, stayed in the back, and left before the reception.
I didn't think much of it at the time, I was too numb to care.
But looking back? That should have been my first warning.
1 week later, I found myself at her house for Lucas's first birthday. Balloons, cake, plastic cups, relatives murmuring condolences between forced smiles. I didn't want to be there, God, I didn't want to be anywhere, but my mom had begged me.
Adam would want you to go, she'd said. Family comes first. So I went.
I stood in that backyard, exhausted, hollow, trying to honor my husband's memory, and Cassandra decided to shatter my world with a single announcement. Her son, she claimed, wasn't Tyler's.
He was Adam's.
And then the forged will.
Half of my house. My husband's name dragged through the mud, his memory twisted into something grotesque. But here's the thing. I didn't laugh that day because I thought it was funny. I laughed because it was impossible. Biologically, scientifically, medically impossible.
See, Cassandra never knew this, but 2 years before Lucas was born, Adam had undergone surgery. He'd been having pain for months before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, basically enlarged veins in his scrotum. The doctors recommended surgery. The procedure went well, but during it, the surgeon strongly advised a vasectomy too. The damage was extensive, and the risk of recurrence was high. Adam and I agonized over it, especially after years of fertility struggles. But in the end, we agreed it was the right choice for his health. So, Adam had the vasectomy. 2 years before Lucas was conceived.
And we told no one.
Not our parents, not our friends, no one. After years of invasive questions about our infertility, we'd learned to keep that part of our lives private. The only people who knew were me, Adam, and his doctors. Which means there was zero chance that Adam could be Lucas's father. And Adam, smart as he was, had predicted Cassandra might try something. One evening, not long after the surgery, we were sitting in the garden. He had an ice pack discreetly balanced on his lap, and he said quietly, "Bridget,
I don't think Cassandra is done. She might try something worse one day." I laughed it off back then, told him he was being paranoid. But Adam didn't laugh.
He scheduled a meeting with his attorney, James Wilson, the very next week. I sat in that office while Adam detailed everything, Cassandra's inappropriate comments, her attempts to get too close, the late-night texts she thought I didn't know about.
He even mentioned the surgery. James had advised him to document everything. The advances. The messages. The medical records.
You never know, James had said, better to have it and not need it, than need it and not have it. So we did. We kept a file every creepy interaction, every suggestive text, plus the vasectomy records. Adam even updated his will through proper legal channels, leaving everything to me.
Copies were filed with James, and the originals went into a safety deposit box at our bank.
We used to joke and call it our disaster kit. Adam had laughed, saying he didn't plan on going anywhere for at least 50 years. But when Cassandra pulled that forged will out of her purse at the party, my heart didn't drop, it hardened.
Because I already knew she couldn't win.
Adam had made sure of it. The next morning, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who'd known Adam and me for years, led me into a private viewing room with a kind smile and quiet condolences.
And when I unlocked that safety deposit box, I found exactly what I needed.
The real will, notarized and airtight, leaving everything to me.
The medical records from Adam's vasectomy.
A journal where Adam had documented every unwanted advance from Cassandra, dates, times, even quotes.
Copies of her texts. And at the very bottom, a sealed envelope with my name written in Adam's handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "My dearest Bridget," it began. "If you're reading this, then something has happened to me.
I hope this is years from now, when we're old and gray, but if not, if Cassandra has tried to hurt you in my absence, I want you to know I prepared for this.
Use these documents. Protect yourself. Protect our life. You are my everything. I love you beyond time."
I sat in that tiny room and sobbed. Because even in death, Adam had been looking out for me. And in that moment, I promised myself, Cassandra was not going to win.
The morning after I read Adam's letter, I called James Wilson, our attorney.
My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. I needed help, and I knew Adam had trusted James more than anyone when it came to protecting us. James's office was in this old converted brownstone in downtown Boston, polished wood, quiet halls, the kind of place that smelled like money and discretion.
The receptionist recognized me immediately. Her expression softened as soon as she saw my face. "Mrs.
Preston," she said gently.
"Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Anne. I'm so sorry for your loss." James himself came out to meet me.
60s, silver hair, glasses perched low on his nose, he had been Adam's mentor back when Adam first joined the firm. He pulled me into a brief hug, something he'd never done before. "Bridget," he said quietly.
"I can't tell you how devastated I am about Adam.
He was one of the good ones."
"He was," I whispered, my throat tight.
And then I pulled out the forged will Cassandra had waved around like a weapon. James put on his glasses, read through it carefully, and his face darkened the further he got. Finally, he set it down with a sigh. "This," he said flatly, "is an amateur forgery.
The language is wrong, the formatting is sloppy, and the signature?
This would never stand up to expert analysis. But Bridget, he looked me dead in the eyes, the fact that she created this at all is extremely troubling.
I know, I said.
My hands were trembling as I pulled the folder from my bag, the real will, the medical records, Adam's journal.
That's why Adam prepared.
James flipped through everything, nodding slowly. Thorough, he muttered.
Adam was nothing if not thorough. These medical records alone are enough to destroy her claim.
A vasectomy, confirmed by follow-up tests, performed 2 years before the child's conception, biologically impossible for him to be the father. I exhaled, but the relief was short-lived.
So what do? I can't just let her try to take my home.
But I also don't want to humiliate her publicly.
And Lucas, he's innocent in all this. He's just a baby.
James leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled.
We have 2 main options.
We can pursue criminal charges, fraud, forgery, attempted theft. Given the amount of money involved, she could face jail time. Or, he paused, watching my face carefully, we can handle this privately. Confront her with the evidence. Force her to retract. Negotiate a way forward that protects you while avoiding a courtroom battle.
I didn't answer right away. My stomach was in knots.
The idea of my sister going to prison made me sick, even after what she'd done. But I couldn't let her get away with this. James must have read the conflict in my face, because he added, before we decide, I recommend bringing in a private investigator.
People don't pull stunts like this unless they're desperate. There's likely more going on here than you know. That's when Frank Delaney entered the picture.
He was a former Boston detective turned PI, recommended by James. Stocky, no nonsense, with a gruff Boston accent that made him sound like every cop in every movie you've ever seen. He listened as I laid out the situation, jotting notes, asking sharp questions. He wanted to know about Cassandra's relationship with Tyler, her financial situation, her behavior over the last few years.
That's when it hit me, I didn't really know my sister anymore.
We'd grown so distant, especially since Lucas was born. I tried to help her, tried to be the good aunt, but she'd push me away more often than not.
Frank finally closed his notebook. All right. I'll need a few days.
I'll dig into her finances, her housing, her relationship with the kid's actual father.
My guess?
She's drowning in debt or about to lose something big. That usually drives this kind of fraud.
I nodded. And Tyler? Frank smirked. Don't worry. I'll find him. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Frank. Bridget, he said. You're gonna want to come back to James's office. We've got a situation.
When I arrived, both men were sitting at the conference table, papers spread everywhere.
Frank wasted no time.
Your sister's in deep, he said bluntly. She's sitting on over 75 grand in debt.
Credit cards maxed out, personal loans, unpaid medical bills for Lucas. He had heart surgery as an infant, didn't he? My stomach clenched.
I remembered the hospital visits, the way Cassandra had cried to me on the phone about being overwhelmed. She's been rejected for 3 new loans just this past month, Frank continued.
And she's facing eviction. 4 months behind on rent. Landlord filed the paperwork last week. She's got until the end of the month before they throw her out. I sank back in my chair, stunned. But Frank wasn't done. As for Tyler? He's long gone.
Packed up, moved to Seattle with a new girlfriend, pays maybe $200 a month in child support when he feels like it.
And get this, Frank slid a file across the table. He's got a history. Domestic violence charges. Unpaid child support for another kid in New Hampshire. There's even a warrant out for him. I felt sick. But then Frank pulled out something worse. Printouts of text messages.
Your sister's been planning this for weeks, he said. And then he read them. Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. The house is worth at least $800,000. If I play this right, I'll have a nest egg for Lucas and me.
The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop. Found Adam's signature online from some auction. Looks totally legit. Bridget's always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share.
She got 11 years with him. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. My hand shook as I read those words.
The coldness. The calculation. This wasn't grief. This wasn't desperation. This was premeditated betrayal. My own sister.
And for the first time since Adam's death, anger cut through the fog of my grief like fire.
Because now I knew Cassandra wasn't just trying to hurt me.
She was trying to destroy Adam's memory, my marriage, and everything we had built together, all to cover her own mess.
And I wasn't about to let that happen.
By the time I left James's office with that folder full of evidence, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my car keys. I sat there in the driver's seat for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe. On one hand, I wanted to storm straight to Cassandra's house, slam those text messages on her kitchen table, and scream until the walls shook. On the other hand, she was still my sister.
And Lucas, he was innocent.
Just a baby caught in the middle of a storm he didn't ask for.
The rage and the grief twisted together until I felt like I might choke. That night, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chin. I'd been seeing her since Adam's death, and when I said, I need an emergency session, she didn't hesitate. Her office was this peaceful, plant-filled space that smelled faintly of lavender. I sat down on her couch and unloaded everything, the fake will, the forged signature, the debts, the texts, the PI's report. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted, my voice shaking. But what do I do? She's my sister. And Lucas, he's just a baby. None of this is his fault. Dr. Jen listened quietly, nodding now and then, her hands folded in her lap. When I finally stopped talking, she said, Bridget, it sounds like this pattern has been there for years. Competition. Manipulation. Cassandra pushing boundaries. What's happening now is an escalation, not something new. I know, I whispered. My throat ached. But the idea of sending her to prison. Dr. Chan leaned forward. Compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind, you can even love someone, and still set firm boundaries with consequences. Sometimes protecting yourself means saying no, even to family. Her words sank in like stones in water. I left her office with my heart still heavy but my mind clearer. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let Cassandra get away with this. But I also wasn't going to destroy Lucas's life in the process. The next morning, I called her. My voice was calm, measured, like I was just having a normal conversation. We need to talk about the will, I said. On the other end, her tone was smug. Almost triumphant. I knew you'd come around. I'll be there tomorrow at 2. I hung up, while rising in my throat. The arrogance in her voice made me want to vomit. That night, I barely slept. I stayed up arranging documents in a neat stack, organizing the medical records, the real will, the printouts of her texts. I placed them in order on my coffee table, like a trial exhibit. James had warned me, Massachusetts is a two-party consent state. I couldn't secretly record her. But I could ask her permission to record, framing it as making sure we both have a copy of our agreement. That way, anything she admitted would be locked in. The next day, at precisely 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and opened the door. Cassandra stood there in a new outfit, makeup done, hair curled, looking polished and confident, like she was walking into a job interview she was certain she'd already gotten. Come in, I said, my voice even. I led her into the living room, where 2 chairs faced each other with a coffee table between them. On the table sat a pitcher of water, 2 glasses, a recorder, and the folder of documents. She glanced at the setup and smirked. Wow. Formal. I hope you don't mind if I record our conversation, I said evenly. It seems prudent, given the legal nature of what we're discussing. She hesitated, just a flicker, but then shrugged. Sure. Whatever makes you comfortable. The will's clear, anyway. This doesn't need to be complicated. I clicked the recorder on, stating the date, time, and confirming she'd given consent. Then I sat back, studying her face. Before we discuss the will, I said softly, I want to hear exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam. And then, with all the confidence of someone who thought she was untouchable, Cassandra launched into her story. She claimed she and Adam had an affair 2 years ago. That he was unhappy in our marriage, that they met at a hotel downtown, that Lucas was conceived during one of those encounters. She even tried to put on this fake sincerity, widening her eyes as she said, he always meant to tell you, Bridget. He just didn't want to stress you out when Lucas was born with his heart condition. But he promised me he'd provide for his son. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I just asked questions. Which hotel? What room number? What nights of the week? Did they order room service? What side of the bed did Adam prefer? Did he shower before or after? The details only someone who actually knew Adam in that way would be able to answer. Cassandra faltered. She stammered. She contradicted herself. Finally, she snapped. Why does any of that matter? The point is, Lucas is Adam's son. And the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him. I leaned forward, calm as stone. Actually, Cassandra, both of those claims are lies. And then I opened the folder. I slid the first set of papers across the coffee table. These, I said, my voice steady, are Adam's medical records. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy after surgery for a varicocele. It was successful. Follow-up tests confirmed it. Which means biologically, medically, scientifically, it was impossible for Adam to father a child. Cassandra's face went pale. She picked up the records, scanning them with shaking hands. These could be faked, she muttered, her voice weak. They're not, I said flatly. And Adam's doctor is prepared to testify if necessary. I let the silence hang heavy before I pulled out the next document and placed it on the table. This, I continued, is Adam's legitimate will. Drafted and notarized by James Wilson, witnessed by 2 partners at his firm, and filed properly with the court. It leaves everything to me. No mention of you. No mention of Lucas. Her confidence wavered.
She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried to rally.
He must have changed it after that one. The will I have is newer. The will you have, I cut her off, is a forgery. A sloppy one. James has already identified multiple errors in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. You committed a felony, Cassandra.
Forging a will in Massachusetts is punishable by up to 5 years in prison.
Her lips parted.
For the first time, she looked genuinely rattled.
But I wasn't done.
I pulled out the final stack of papers, printouts of her text messages.
And then there's this. Your little planning session with Jenna.
Talking about how Adam's death was your chance to get what you deserve.
How Dave photoshopped Adam's signature from a charity auction.
How you called me the golden child and said it was time for you to get your share.
Do you want me to read them out loud? Or should I just send them straight to the DA?
Her eyes went wide.
You went through my phone? I leaned back. No.
You were sloppy.
Frank Delaney, a private investigator, pulled these from Jenna's phone records.
He also pulled your financials.
$75,000 in debt. 4 months behind on rent.
Tyler gone, paying scraps in child support. And this, I tapped the texts, was your big plan to save yourself. For a long moment, she just sat there, frozen.
The mask slipping. The confident smirk gone. Then she broke.
You don't understand, she hissed, her voice cracking.
I'm drowning, Bridget.
I'm a single mom with bills I can't pay, a kid with medical needs, and parents who treat me like I'm a screw-up.
I thought Adam owed me. After everything. After always being second best to you. Don't you see?
I deserved something. Her words hit me like a slap. I deserved something. I stared at her, this woman who shared my blood, who I had bent over backward for my whole life, who I had knit a blanket for while she gave birth to her son.
And now she was looking at me like I was the villain. I exhaled slowly. You didn't just try to steal from me. You tried to rewrite Adam's life.
You tried to smear his name, to make him a cheater, to make his memory ugly.
Also, you could bail yourself out of the mess you created.
Tears welled in her eyes.
I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked me for help, I snapped. You could have been honest. You could have trusted me instead of stabbing me in the back.
The silence was suffocating. The recorder sat on the table between us, blinking red, capturing every word.
Finally, I leaned forward. My voice was low, sharp. Here's what's going to happen, Cassandra. You're going to drop this claim. Publicly. You're going to admit the will you produced was fake.
And you're going to agree, on record, that Adam is not Lucas's father.
If you don't,
I press charges.
And I let the DA drag you through court until you're bankrupt, jailed, or both.
Her mouth opened like she wanted to fight. But then her shoulders slumped.
She looked down, defeated. Fine, she whispered. I'll do it. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe.
But as she sat there, dabbing at her eyes with fake tears, I had this sinking feeling.
This wasn't over. Cassandra had agreed because she was cornered. But I knew my sister. And when Cassandra got desperate, she got dangerous. And I wasn't wrong.
Because just 1 week later, everything exploded again. For about 3 days after our confrontation, I almost let myself believe it was over.
Cassandra had left my house shaken, pale, and deflated.
She'd muttered her fine, I'll do it, and agreed to retract everything.
I had it all recorded. On paper, she was cornered.
But if there's one thing I've learned about my sister, it's that she doesn't go down quietly. At first, she tried to play the remorseful act. She called me the next morning, her voice soft, dripping with forced vulnerability. I'm sorry, Bridget, she said.
I wasn't thinking straight. I panicked.
Lucas deserves better than a mom who makes mistakes like that.
I bit my tongue.
A part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the idea that maybe my sister had finally woken up to the damage she'd caused.
But deep down, I knew.
Cassandra's apologies were like perfume, strong when fresh, but quick to fade.
And sure enough, by the end of the week, the storm hit.
It started with whispers.
My aunt called me one evening, hesitant. Bridget.
I heard something strange from Cassandra.
She's telling people Adam wasn't who you thought he was. That he stepped out on your marriage.
My blood ran cold.
She's saying what? I asked, my voice sharp.
That Adam had a secret life, my aunt said carefully.
That Lucas is his son, and you're covering it up.
I didn't want to believe it, but her voice trailed off.
I hung up before I could scream.
The next day, my phone buzzed with messages from friends, neighbors, even a client.
Cassandra had taken her story public.
She was whispering to anyone who would listen that Adam had cheated, that I was lying, that she had the real will but I was suppressing it with my lawyer's help.
She didn't just want my house anymore. She wanted my reputation.
She wanted Adam's memory burned to the ground. I remember standing in the middle of my living room, phone in hand, shaking so hard I could barely see the screen. The grief I thought I'd already drowned in came flooding back, but this time it wasn't just grief. It was rage. I called James immediately. He was calm, collected, but his voice was steel. "Bridget, this ends now," he said. "She's escalating. If she wants war, we'll give her war." And then he said the words I'd been dreading: "We need to prepare for court." But before we even filed, something else happened, something I never saw coming. Late one night, just as I was locking up the house, I heard a soft knock on the door. I hesitated, heart pounding, then opened it. And there she was. Cassandra. Her mascara streaked, her hair a mess, holding Lucas in her arms. He was half asleep, whimpering softly, clutching her shirt. "Bridget," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please. I don't know where else to go." I froze. Because in that moment, I didn't see my scheming, manipulative sister. I saw a terrified, desperate woman clutching her baby like he was the only thing tethering her to the earth. And against every ounce of logic screening in my head, I stepped aside and let her in. The second she stepped inside, the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. I led her into the living room, where the same coffee table still sat, the one where I'd laid out the evidence against her just days earlier. Now she sat there clutching Lucas, rocking him back and forth, her face pale and streaked with tears. I poured her a glass of water and slid it across the table. She didn't touch it. "Bridget," she started, her voice cracking. "I know you hate me. I know you'll never forgive me for what I did. But I didn't come here for me. I came here for him." She nodded at Lucas, who had finally drifted to sleep against her shoulder. I crossed my arms. "You nearly destroyed my life. You dragged Adam's name through the mud, tried to steal half my house, and now you want me to just, what? Pretend that didn't happen?" Her shoulders shook. "I don't know what else to do. Tyler's gone, I'm 4 months behind on rent, I got an eviction notice today. I have nowhere to go. Nowhere. If I end up on the street, so does Lucas." Her words cut into me, not because I felt sympathy for her, but because of him. Lucas. My nephew. The little boy I had promised myself I'd protect from day one. I sighed and rubbed my temples. "You can stay here tonight. But tomorrow, we're figuring this out. And Cassandra? You're not going to play me again. Not this time." She nodded quickly, like a drowning woman grabbing at a lifeline. I set up the guest room, tucked Lucas into the bed with the blanket I had knitted for him before he was born, and for the first time in days, the house was quiet. But sometime after midnight, I heard muffled sobs coming from the guest room. I hesitated at the door, then pushed it open. Cassandra was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands, shaking so violently it looked like she might break apart. "Cassandra," I said softly, "you're going to wake him." She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. And then, out of nowhere, she blurted, "It wasn't supposed to be like this." My stomach tightened. What wasn't? She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Lucas. The will. Everything. Bridget, I never meant for it to go this far. I thought," her voice cracked again, "I thought I could scare you into helping me. I didn't think you'd bring lawyers and investigators and all of this." I stared at her. "So you admit it? You made it all up?" Her silence was answer enough. But then she whispered something that chilled me to my bones. "Tyler's not Lucas's father either." The room spun. "What?" Her voice dropped lower, shaky, almost a whisper. "I don't know who is. It was a mistake. A one-night stand. Tyler never knew. I panicked when I found out I was pregnant, and I told him he was the father. Then when Adam died, I thought maybe I could twist it. Maybe I could finally have what you always had." I took a step back, my chest heaving. The audacity. The selfishness. The sheer recklessness. "You used your own child as a pawn," I said, my voice low and shaking with fury. "You lied to Tyler, to Mom and Dad, to me, to everyone. And when that wasn't enough, you dragged Adam into it. My dead husband." Cassandra broke down again, sobbing uncontrollably. "I just wanted a way out. I can't do this alone, Bridget. I'm not like you. I can't hold it together. I thought if I had the house, if I had the money, I could finally breathe." I turned away, gripping the doorframe until my knuckles turned white. Because in that moment, I realized something awful. My sister wasn't just selfish. She wasn't just manipulative. She was broken. And if she kept spiraling like this, she'd drag Lucas down with her. And I couldn't let that happen. I barely slept that night. I lay awake listening to the faint sound of Cassandra's sobs through the wall, staring at the ceiling, torn between fury and pity. Every instinct in me screamed to throw her out the second the sun came up. But then I'd think of Lucas as tiny, innocent, asleep under the blanket I'd made with my own hands. He didn't ask for any of this. He didn't deserve to be collateral damage in Cassandra's chaos. By morning, my decision was made. I walked into the guest room to find Cassandra sitting on the bed, eyes puffy, hair a mess, clutching Lucas like a lifeline. She looked up at me, searching my face for something, mercy, maybe. "Here's how this is going to go," I said firmly. "You're retracting every lie you told. To Mom and Dad, to the family, to anyone else who will listen.
You're going to admit Adam wasn't the father, and that the will was fake. And then we're going to figure out how to get you real help.
But this, I gestured around us, at the wreckage she had created, this ends now.
Her lips trembled. She nodded. Okay. I'll do it. For a moment, I believed her.
But that afternoon, while I was on the phone with James updating him, I stepped into the kitchen and realized the house was too quiet.
Too quiet.
I dropped the phone and ran upstairs.
The guest room was empty. Lucas's blanket was on the floor. The closet was open, hangers swaying. And Cassandra's purse was gone. My heart slammed in my chest as I sprinted to the front door. The street was silent, no car in sight.
She was gone. She had taken Lucas and vanished.
Panic gripped me so hard I couldn't breathe.
I called her phone straight to voicemail.
Again and again. Nothing. Then came the text.
If you won't help me, I'll find someone who will.
Don't try to stop me.
My blood ran cold.
Because Cassandra wasn't just unstable. She was desperate.
And desperate people make dangerous choices. I called Frank immediately, voice shaking.
Within an hour, he was at my house, notebook in hand, face grim.
She's running, he said after I showed him the text.
But she doesn't have money, doesn't have stability. My guess? She'll try to go to Tyler. He's the only person she thinks she can manipulate into taking her in.
But Tyler's dangerous, I whispered, clutching my chest.
Frank, he's violent.
If she goes to him, if Lucas is around him.
I know, he said sharply. That's why we're moving fast.
Frank started making calls, pulling strings. James began drafting an emergency petition for custody, temporary guardianship of Lucas if we could prove Cassandra was unfit. I was numb, my hands shaking as I signed every document he put in front of me. That night, I sat in the silence of my house, staring at Lucas's forgotten blanket on the floor, and I realized.
This wasn't about saving Cassandra anymore. This was about saving Lucas. And I was ready to fight for him with everything I had.
The next 48 hours were a blur of calls, signatures, and pounding anxiety.
James filed the emergency petition, Frank tracked Cassandra's movements like a bloodhound, and I sat on edge waiting for the phone to ring with news.
It finally came late on a rainy Thursday night. Frank's gravelly voice was quick and sharp, we found her.
Motel off Route 1. She's with Lucas. And Tyler. My stomach dropped. Within hours, police were on the scene.
I wasn't allowed to be there for the extraction, but Frank was. Later, he told me Cassandra had screamed, cried, clung to Lucas until the officers pried him from her arms.
Tyler, drunk and belligerent, ended up in handcuffs for an outstanding warrant. Lucas was handed over to Child Protective Services while the court reviewed my emergency petition. When they brought Lucas into the courtroom the next morning, clutching that same knitted blanket I'd made, I nearly broke down.
Cassandra sat across the room, her face gaunt, her hair unwashed, a public defender at her side.
She wouldn't look at me.
The judge listened to James present the evidence, the forged will, the PI's report, the texts, the medical records, Cassandra's financial collapse, the motel incident. Piece by piece, her lies unraveled in front of everyone. And then James presented Adam's journal, his careful documentation of every advance Cassandra had made, every boundary she had crossed. He read one entry aloud, Adam's handwriting describing how Cassandra had touched his arm at dinner, whispered she could give him what I couldn't, how he had immediately told me afterward. Hearing Adam's words in that courtroom, it felt like he was standing beside me, defending me even in death.
Cassandra finally snapped. She stood up, shouting, he wanted me. He just didn't want her to know. He promised he'd take care of me.
The judge banged the gavel until she sat down, but the damage was done. The entire courtroom had seen it, her desperation, her delusion. In the end, the ruling was clear. The forged will was dismissed. Cassandra was found to have committed attempted fraud. Criminal charges were referred to the DA, though I quietly asked James to push for leniency if possible. The judge granted me temporary guardianship of Lucas until Cassandra could prove herself stable and fit. When the gavel fell, I felt both relief and heartbreak. Relief that Adam's name was safe. Relief that my home was safe. Relief that Lucas was safe. But heartbreak, too, because Cassandra wasn't just my sister anymore. She was a stranger. A stranger who had nearly destroyed me. She was led out of the courtroom in tears, calling my name. I didn't turn around. Update. It's been 6 months since that day. Lucas is still with me. The court extended my guardianship while Cassandra undergoes mandatory therapy, financial counseling, and supervised visitation. Some days she shows up for visits. Some days she doesn't. I don't know if she'll ever get her life together, but I know Lucas has stability here. He has love. My parents, it's complicated. They're heartbroken, caught between their two daughters. They support me, but I can see the guilt in their eyes when Cassandra's name comes up. As for me, I'm still grieving Adam. I don't think that'll ever stop. But I also feel like I've found a new purpose. Protecting Lucas. Giving him the safe, loving home Adam and I always dreamed of filling with children. Sometimes at night, when Lucas is asleep in the room next to mine, I sit on the porch swing at him and I used to share.
I read his letter again. The one he left in the safety deposit box. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to be loved.
Whatever happens, know that I love you beyond words, beyond time.
And I whisper into the night, I know, Adam. And I'm keeping my promise.
Because in the end, Cassandra may have tried to take everything from me. But all she really did was remind me how strong Adam made me.
How strong love made me.
And how I will never let Lucas grow up believing her lies.
Not now. Not ever.